that's least advanced, and this is a country that's actually, in terms of development, going backwards, relying heavier and heavier on commodity exports. And if we should we add Brazil? And if we're adding Brazil, maybe Chile as well, maybe Mexico, again, fast-growing economy, maybe Canada as one of the established, maybe one of economy that is slowing down. These are the questions which actually have no answers, or actually the answers are being created yet, because what we face are the major shifts in this economic order, and I think that the map of economic power and economic supremacy is changing together with the map of political supremacy in the world, which I hope we will discuss later. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Karina, for such a comprehensive talk. And I think you have covered all the different indicators, starting from purchasing power parity, HDI, GNI per capita. And then at the end, what I can understand from your presentation, that there is ambiguity in definition and identification of classifications related to identification of emerging power. We are not in position to identify that which one is a emerging power in context of economic indicators. But there are other aspects of power is also there, and then that includes geopolitics and other dimensions. And I think for that, I would invite our last panelist for this session, Professor Arvind Kumar, who would like to talk about geostrategic dimensions of emerging power and what this emerging power has implications for global order.
Good afternoon, students, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I was almost thinking how, in fact, I should change the theme after listening to Dr. Karina's presentation, because she highlighted many things on BRICS. But I will stick to the topic, but I will say a few words about the things which she said. First of all, it is too early to say or make any statement on BRICS. It's one of the nascent, the most new, I will not say it's a regional institution, it's a grouping of like-minded countries. Those countries which have, to a greater extent, been able to confront lots of problems, and these problems mostly emanate from outside, but at the same time, the way the consistency in the economic growth is seen, all these countries are like-minded. Let me also say that she said that there are lots of tension between India and China on economic cooperation. Let me highlight that, in fact, economic cooperation between India and China has become the overriding factor, and it has replaced all the political tensions, in the sense that these two countries are not talking on the political part of their relationship, but they are emphasizing mostly how best they can enhance their trade and commerce. Anyway, lots of issues she raised, we can debate those things further, but at the same time, let me stick to my theme, which again is very important in terms of understanding the implications of emerging powers for the new world order. As the topic suggests, the new emerging powers in international relations, it means that there are certain powers which are coming on the horizon of the international system. There are certain indicators which are being seen, is very much visible in terms of seeing that these countries are now going to be the major powers of the world. So what I will do in this 20 or half an hour, whatever time our chair gives to me, that I will highlight the larger discourse which is shaping in the international system on the nature of the overall discourse about this center of gravity shift from west to east. And then what is the evolving trend in international relations? The shift which is taking place, which is again a matter of discourse only, in the sense that whether the shift will take place at all, how many years it will take. In fact, this debate is not new, that the center of gravity is shifting from west to east. And when that debate comes, the major powers like India and China are being debated across the spectrum in the international system. Then I will highlight what makes a country rising power or emerging power, what are the challenges to emerging powers and existing power centers in the contemporary world environment. All of you may be aware, because I see this class largely represented by geopolitics students, and my new students have come for the study abroad. Many of them have very keen mind to know about this geopolitics and international relations. The new pivot is emerging, and the center of this new pivot is going to be the Asia Pacific. So what are the capabilities and potential of this new pivot in the international system? That I will highlight. And then the debate, which is gaining momentum largely, and that debate is on basically to understand about the strategic competitors and strategic partners. Because these are all linked with this discourse on the implications of these emerging powers for the new world order. And then likely scenario. But to start with, I shall say that what are the factors and what are the major things which have happened in international relations in the last 2 decades? What is in and what is out in international relations? And what is constant? So if you understand these 3 factors, what is in international relation, what is out in international relation, and what is constant. So just I will give you a brief overview on this. What is in, as said by the chair in his inaugural remarks, complex interdependence. So the world has become highly globalized, interconnected, and that is really guiding the behavioral patterns of nation state. It is no more a situation where nation state would afford to fight a war with the other state, because they are interlinked. So that integration or integrated world has become the major dominant factor in international relations. The other thing which has really been guiding the behavioral patterns of nation state, and by and large the challenges which a number of nation states across the globe come across, these challenges are very much common, and that is rise of non-state actors. So that is in. What is in, if I say, these are the factors which are becoming a part of the international relation. And the third is largely asymmetric conflict. Let me spend some time on what is out in international relations. In fact, as I said, physical confrontation between the states and among the states is out, with the possible exception of war on terrorism. Anyway, this again is to deal with the challenges mostly keep emanating from this asymmetric conflict. The second part, which again is very important, and that is being out, being phased out, is supremacy of the West. It is debatable. I will try to really elaborate further on this issue of how supremacy of the West is being phased out in international relations. What has been the constant factor in international relations, which really guides the behavioral patterns? The most important thing in international relations is agenda setting. A nation state would like to evolve norms, values, and tries to impose on the other actors, other nation states. So that has been constant. It is immaterial that which are the dominating countries which really sets the agenda for the globe. But agenda setting has been the constant factor. Then second very crucial factor, that is power rivalry. Power rivalry also connotes a struggle for supremacy, creating a sphere of influence, and that is constant. Even a nation state would like to build a particular space for itself in a particular region. That is what is creating a sphere of influence. So that is constant. Then other important factor which has been constant over the years, especially I am giving you all these things on the basis of the experiences which the nation states have really undergone in the last 6.5 decades, especially post-45 I am giving you. The other constant factor in international system has been a strategic competition. Nations compete among themselves and between themselves to maximize their power, and that has to be understood in the context of both realist and neo-realist paradigm. How the maximization of power and maximization of interest in the international system function. Then, what has been constant over the years? This notion of emerging power, rising power, it's not a new debate. The notion of emerging power has all the time been there, because some power or the other has been the key factor in understanding the behavioral patterns of the international system. So that again is there. One of the points which our first speaker made, Dr. Boguslaw, that is the notion of emerging power has no legal implication. It has lots of relevance in terms of understanding how the debate on the rising power or emerging power is gaining momentum. The question is not to ask for legal validity of that debate. The question is that how these nation states are emerging. Again, the point which came during the debate by Dr. Karina, that some of the issues which really are highly debatable in terms of understanding the economic parameters or economic indices, which really helps a nation state to emerge on the horizon, and that is what is economic indices. And purchasing power parity, maybe 5 countries have the fastest growing economy, but in terms of seeing their contribution in the overall growth of world economy, they are still contributing very low, and that, as she rightly said, that it again depends upon the per capita income. Japanese economy may be growing at a very slower rate in comparison to China, but in terms of overall contribution of Japanese economy or the per capita income, Chinese per capita income is 10 times lower than Japanese per capita income. So those factors are there, but point is that how the shift is taking place and what are the ingredients of that debate. So, but this debate is highly restricted in the sense that the debate highlights and raises the question how the concentration of power until 1990, until the demise of the Soviet Union, was restricted to these 2 of the power blocks. But that is not going to continue because now the world is moving towards multipolarity, where you have multiple centers of power. And in that context, rise of Asia Pacific becomes very important to understand the debate on the emerging power in international system. And in this Asia Pacific, the most of the debate which has taken place is with regard to India and China. I would like to say few words about India and China. What is the current situation? What is the potential of India and China? And can these 2 countries combine lead the world affairs? Because that is what is the debate, and that is how, and then I will try to tell you about the trajectory and the future or likely role. As all of you are aware, that China has been growing very consistently economically. It ranks the 2nd largest in the world, its economic growth, and it is export-oriented economy. It is highly dependent on consumers in the West. See the linkages here, because this will give you certain idea that where this debate is moving towards. And China basically also has been growing over the years militarily, and that is very significant. The development in the field of strategic sector as well as military sector doesn't mean that it has the ambition to lead the world. So far, whatever development has taken place in the strategic sector and the military sector connote that the country like China would like to maintain its territorial integrity and try to assert itself in terms of seeing that its interest is not hurt in the region and across the globe. The question is that the other countries in that Asia Pacific pivot, again India considers itself to be a part of Asia Pacific. Whatever happens in China in terms of its strategic capabilities or military capabilities, it will have certain ripple effect or triggering effect, let me use the word triggering effect, on India's capability. So what happens in that context, that India also has been rising consistently in the economic sphere. It has been building its own military capabilities. It also has been concentrating sufficiently in enhancing its strategic capabilities to respond to the challenges which might emanate in the future from China. But these issues, as I said in the beginning, that the nation states in the current context, they cannot afford to fight a physical war. So the larger challenge which is coming to these rising states or emerging states, these challenges come mostly from the asymmetry conflict and the non-state actors. And that is what is going to hinder the progress of these two countries. As again, it is very commonly argued that 21st century belongs to Asia. And it has lots of things to convey to the world why these things are being told that 21st century belongs to Asia. And this debate again is not new. In fact, the debate started way back when the demise of the Soviet Union took place, that the 21st century will belong to Asia. And this was again with the context of